The 2000s had some crazy vehicles in America, but nothing quite like the Ford Explorer Sport Trac. It had the heart of an SUV, but a truck bed out back. So what made it special? And why did it disappear just as quickly as it arrived? To find out, we need to go back to 2000, where exciting developments were happening over at Ford. Ford's executives were wondering how to create an entirely new vehicle category to shake things up, and they would soon find the perfect idea. They wanted to create something called a sport utility truck. But what exactly was the point? They were already making the F-150, which was a heavy-duty workhorse. They also had the Ranger, which was the practical no-frills option. So where did the Sport Trac fit in? Right in between. Bigger and more comfortable than the Ranger, but smaller and smoother riding than the F-150. It was for people who needed a truck but didn't want to drive one. So Ford made a commitment to bring this idea to life. But the ballsy moves at Ford were only just getting started. They had the idea to derive this truck from the Ford Explorer. The Explorer was their SUV series, and Ford wanted a new creation to share that same UN-105 platform. This concept was actually revolutionary for its time. Folks now had the opportunity to drive something with the comfort of an SUV, but the utility of a pickup. One of the first true crossover vehicles. But then a new problem emerged for Ford. You see, the F-150 was clearly a best-selling pickup truck. So if Ford marketed this wrong, they could cannibalize sales from the more profitable full-size truck. So Ford made a fateful decision. They marketed the Sport Trac as part of the Explorer SUV family rather than a standalone pickup. So how did it sell? Well, before we get to that, we need to dive deeper into the Sport Trac itself. Because folks, this wasn't just a cut and paste job. No, Ford actually stretched the frame of the Explorer by over 14 inches. This made it 40% stiffer laterally than a standard Explorer, giving it the handling of a true utility vehicle. Confident, planted, and ready, and to match that muscle, they gave it a brand new look. The Sport Trac had a power dome hood and a bald two-tone fascia. Then you had roof rails on the top, which were rated for 100 pounds when crossbars were added. But the real surprise waited out back, because Ford gave the Sport Trac something no one else had. The first all-composite cargo box, 50 inches long, all made of molded plastic. This made sure it wouldn't rust and would be difficult to dent. But the innovation didn't stop there. The available tonneau cover could fold from the front or rear, keeping your gear dry and secure. You also had a stainless cargo cage doubled as a bed extender, adding nearly 2 extra feet when the tailgate was down. But cargo space wasn't the only thing Ford was rethinking. Step inside and the first thing you'll notice is the hosable rubber flooring. See, this vehicle wasn't about luxury. It was meant for mud, dogs, boots, and fun. And up front, 6-way power adjustment for comfort on long road trips. But then, Ford added something no one saw coming. It had a button. Tap it and the rear glass dropped down automatically. Why was this so important? Imagine hauling fishing rods or your favorite 4-leg co-pilot. No cramming involved or cracking open side doors. It was a feature so smart you wondered why every SUV didn't have it. But climbing in the backseat and you'll find real surprises. Cup holders, rear climate controls, even seats that folded flat to reveal hidden storage compartments. Perfect for gear, tools, or whatever you didn't want rolling around. What about the engine? Well, power came from Ford's trusty 4-liter V6, 205 horsepower sent through a smooth 5-speed automatic. It wasn't trying to win drag races, it was trying to last. And it sure did. But what made this version even more interesting? The suspension. It was firmer than the standard Explorer, and tuned perfectly for comfort. The Sport Trac checked so many boxes you thought it was a surefire success. Even the base price at $23,000 was a fair ask for that kind of versatility. But here's the twist. People didn't quite know what to do with it, and sales just didn't match Ford's expectations. SUV folks didn't want the bed, and truck buyers didn't want the SUV cabin. It was a middle ground no one was asking for at the time. It also had another key issue. You see, the wheelbase was just too long. Great for highway cruising, but not for breakover angles. If you wanted serious off-roading, a regular Explorer made more sense. But if you wanted towing, a proper pickup beat it. And if you wanted both, most folks just didn't know where this fit in. But Ford didn't just give up just yet. The first generation Sports Trac would pave the way for a second generation which was miles better. This refined version came with something earlier models never had. A V8. Not just any V8 either. A 4.6-liter powerhouse with nearly 300 horses. This was rare in a mid-sized truck and even muscular enough to command respect today. But the engine wasn't the only thing that made it special. Ford had big dreams for this edition they called the Adrenaline. Originally, it was going to be a true performance monster. which had a supercharged engine. But then came 2008, and it was time for the whole industry to buckle up. The economy collapsed, and priorities shifted, so Ford pulled the plug on the supercharged dream, and the adrenaline became just an appearance package. Still, it looked the part. Blacked out headlights, 20-inch chrome wheels, and a menacing grille. But appearances were only half the story. Open the rear doors and you'll find something unexpected. A surprisingly spacious back seat. Not cramped, not an afterthought. A real place for real passengers. Because of this, the Sport Trac wasn't just a dad's toy. It was a practical family hauler. A true garage-friendly solution in a time before every truck looked like a military-grade transport. But it didn't stop there. Pop the tailgate and you'll find a truck bed that came with a cover and a little secret. Lift it up and there's an emergency release inside. That's how versatile this thing was. And if the bed felt too short, Ford gave you a flip-out extender to give you more space for lumber, bikes, or a weekend's worth of mulch. But perhaps the most clever feature was hiding in plain sight. This Sport Trac had a keypad on the driver's door. No need to carry your keys when you went fishing or hiking. All you have to do was punch in a code and you're back on the road. Inside, it wasn't a luxury, but it did have one thing: character. Power pedals, a sunroof, even a rear window that slid down at the push of a button. Even Bluetooth in 2008. Still, not everything aged well. The interior plastics were cheap and the dashboard was pretty dull. But Ford was changing. While this interior might feel like a step behind, the engineering underneath was a step forward. And when you drove it, you could feel that change. The ride was smoother than any mid-2000s pickup, and the new V8 was satisfying for sure. The Explorer Sport Trac didn't try to impress with chrome or horsepower. It tried something harder, to be useful in real life. And maybe, just maybe, it was 20 years too early. Because now everything is chasing the formula it introduced: comfort, utility, and a little character in between. Today, the roads are filled with vehicles trying to do what the Sport Trac did back then. Chevy jumped in with the Avalanche, which featured Chevy's innovative midgate. This was a fold-down wall that let the cabin open up into the truck bed. But if the Avalanche was suburban utility, the Cadillac EXT was its stylish older cousin: leather, chrome, and prestige. But then Honda took a different route in 2005. When the Ridgeline arrived, it didn't try to look like a traditional pickup. Instead, it was built on a unibody SUV platform. This offered car-like handling and featured clever innovations like a dual-action tailgate and a lockable in-bed trunk. Over time, buyers realized it was one of the most practical trucks on the market. So yeah, the Sport Trac was never a runaway sales hit, but it did plant the flag in unexplored territory. It dared to blend two worlds: the comfort of an SUV with the usefulness of a truck. So in our opinion, the Sport Trac wasn't a failure. It was just early. And sometimes the first one through the wall doesn't get the glory, but they paved the way for everyone else.